Two of the Bible verses that I would like to begin with, and right through this evening I will come back to some aspects in these verses. The first one is in Matthew 6 from the Message, and it's really beautiful to see in the beginning, and that'll be actually maybe the golden thread right through this whole presentation. The focus on opening to God, God alone, and that'll be the focus of this evening as well. Steep your life in God reality, God initiative, God provisions. Don't worry about missing out. You'll find all your everyday human concerns will be met. Give your entire attention to what God is doing right now. And don't get worked up about what may or not happen tomorrow. God will help you deal with whatever hard things come up when the time comes. I think this is the heart of contemplative spirituality. Sometimes I'm thinking of, if you have the same series in the US, Survivor. Now, how it goes is they go to an island or whatever, and then there are a lot of games, and then they've got to vote each other out till only one remains who gets the prize. And if one have to vote things out in your religion, one by one, say, okay, not that one, what would be the last and the most important, the core of everything? And that's the invitation of contemplative spirituality, is really trying to determine what the core is of everything that we do. That's why I think fall is a very good time to perhaps grow in contemplative spirituality, when you let all the leaves fall and to only see what the core of the tree is. So it is really opening up to the expectation that God will provide, and living in that reality that God will take the initiative, and that we steep ourselves in that reality. We actually open ourselves day and night to live in that reality. Not this Sunday, but the following Sunday I'm going to do Psalm 1, and it's so beautiful to see they meditate on the Torah, that is the Word of God, the presence of God, day and night. But that can't be just saying the words the whole time. It's something deeper, an awareness of God in every moment, steeping my life in the reality of God alone. And that's the only and the core thing. And that's why in the middle of this passage it says, give your entire attention to what God is doing right now. And that'll be the line that we will be following. The other verse that I'm going to look at just shortly is from Colossians, the mystery text, or the secret, sometimes been translated as the secret, but the mystery that has been hidden throughout the ages and generations, but has now been revealed to His saints. To them God chose to make known how great among the Gentiles are the riches of the glory of this mystery. It's a rich mystery. Now, what is the mystery? You just want to know, what's the secret? What is the mystery that's been hidden ages? There was a history that's been hidden, and now it's been revealed. And what's the mystery? Christ is in you. Christ is in you. And that's absolutely, it changes everything. If that's the mystery that's been hidden, and I can live in a bigger awareness every day of the mystery that Christ is within me. Not just within me. If you just look at Colossians 3 verse 11, in that renewal there is no longer Greek or Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave and free, but Christ is all and in all. Suddenly, the whole world just bursts open by this hidden truth that's been revealed of Christ's presence in unexpected places, not just in my own life, but also in everyday life, in people, in situations that you would not expect God, in emotions you would not expect God, in even difficult emotions. Usually people just only want to experience God in the positive and the happy and the peaceful times. But it's also possible to experience God's presence and love and embrace in the midst of fear, in the midst of sadness, in the midst of depression, in the midst of utter sadness, feeling hopeless in a situation. But in the midst of that, it's possible to experience God, because God can also be in situations if we really open up to that. So that's why the contemplative spirituality really tries to focus on God and on God alone. And that's the simplicity of it. You'll see the whole time in contemplative spirituality, many of the things you will say, this is really very simple. Just for instance, the kind of exercises, spiritual exercises that one do, it's really weird to think, okay, is this all? That's all. The simplicity of it, on the one hand, makes it accessible, but on the other hand, that also makes it so challenging, because our minds plays tricks on us and wants it more intricate and wants to work it out and want to understand. But that's the invitation, that the focus of contemplative spirituality is focusing on God alone. Maybe you remember about 3 weeks ago when I had the sermon on Martha and Mary, and Jesus saying to Martha, only one thing is needed. Yes, you are busy and you are doing a lot of things, but Mary chose the one thing. And very important, it's not saying that what being busy or being active is wrong, but the question is, while you are being busy, are you grounded in the one thing, the one that's present, the one that asks for all our attention in that moment? If you are aware of God's presence, even in the kitchen, that's fine. But the one thing, the simplicity of it, that's really the beauty of contemplative spirituality. The only thing, that's Thomas Merton, the only thing to seek on contemplative prayer is God. And we seek Him successfully when we realize that we cannot find Him unless He shows Himself to us, and yet, at the same time, that He would not have inspired us to seek Him unless we had already found Him. That sounds like, is it the chicken or the egg? Is it the chicken or the egg? But in the end, it is just God. God planting the seed of desire for God in our hearts, and then inviting us to connect with God, only God, and God also let that desire grow. So the whole process is actually a focus on God. And in the end, what we find is God has always been here, the surprise of that. So I will give a few definitions of contemplation, and you will see in time it will grow, and it links with each other. So you will see the one, it's like a chain. Every one that I'm going to put on the table, every time I give a definition of contemplation, you'll see, okay, it links with the previous, but it also, you will see later, it links with what's following. And then in the end, you'll get an idea of the bigger picture of it. But still, the simplicity of it is actually the beauty of it. So St. John of the Cross said, what contemplation is preserving a loving attentiveness to God with no desire to feel or understand any particular thing concerning Him. Now what we find here is just sitting in awe in the presence of God without the need to understand. Now this is really something, and we'll come back to that later in a section later. But we are so programmed to want to have a final definition, a final image of God, and that is the image of God in whom all I'm standing or looking at. But is it possible for me to just be in the loving attentiveness of God without even on the surface having certain emotions, feeling at ease or whatever? Let's say my emotions, I desire to feel, I really desire to feel happiness and peace, but I'm so worried about my kid, or I'm so worried about my health, and I come to God, and that's exactly what contemplative spirituality offers us. A place to just be in the loving embrace of God without the need to understand or to have a specific feeling. Brother Roger, he's from Thèse. I don't know if you're the Thèse community in France. He said contemplation is nothing more but one's whole person being seized by the reality of God's love. It's all about God. It's everything focused on God and the loving embrace of God. The Webster Dictionary, the first option of the word contemplation is a concentration on spiritual things as a form of private devotion or a state of mystical awareness of God's being. A state of mystical awareness of God's being. So again, please pick up the line again, but that the focus is really to focus on God alone. But God, not as I define God or somebody else defined God, and I clearly know who God is, but an openness to God as with parts of God, of aspects of God that's unknown. There's a very, very important book in the whole contemplative spirituality called The Cloud of Unknowing. We don't know who actually wrote the book, but it was written 500 years ago. The Cloud of Unknowing. And he said actually the path to knowing God is to grow in unknowing, because many of our ideas and concepts and beliefs, actually that's some of the obstacles that why we cannot experience, because we've got certain set ideas about God. We expect God to be here and there in this way. Not just being open in a mystical awareness. I'm just going to be open to whatever way God meet me here in this situation. So the first one is focus on God. The second that we see in these texts is a radical awareness of the presence of God. Our attention to the God that is present, and an invitation to our side that we just become present to the God that's already present. You see, the issue is that we come with blindness, spiritual blindness. We know that God is present. That's the mystery that's always been hidden throughout the ages. Christ is in you. But it's difficult for us sometimes to experience God because we're looking for only avenues of thinking and feeling to experience God. But there is another avenue, and that's the avenue that contemplative spirituality invites you to experience God. on a deeper level, beyond thoughts and emotions. We will come to that later. Maybe just let me read this just to get an idea. In this sense, contemplation is an all-embracing quality of presence. So that's why it's really an invitation to be present. Because if God is in everything, in every situation, and every person that I meet, even hidden, whatever, it's an all-embracing presence. And the more present I become, the more I can become aware of God's presence in the situation. The more absent I am, the more absent God will be for me, because I'm shutting off and I'm closing off to the ways that God is reaching out to me. So, including not only my own inner experience, that's also where we can experience God, but also directly perceiving and responding to situation and needs of the world, rather trying to balance contemplation and action, 50% contemplation, 50% action. It's more accurate to see contemplation in action, undergirding and embracing everything. In this way, all our thoughts and actions can be joined together in prayerful openness, loving responsiveness. So many words one can actually just sit with for many minutes. So let's just, again, very important. Many people think that if you walk the path of contemplation, it means that you're going there off to a small place in the woods, and it's you get cut off from the world, and it doesn't have any influence on the world and doesn't mean any action. Actually, it gives the energy, it gives the reason, the motivation, so that you can go and do things and change the world and go on social justice actions and even use words or do whatever you want to do that day, but it is grounded in that connection with God, that's presence. And so without it, can you feel like it's like just superficial? It brings the depth dimension to every part of your life. So a mystic or a contemplative, that's some of the words that people use in some of the literature. So a mystic is someone that can see God in all things and our unity with God. So let's just listen again. It's a beautiful definition of a mystic or a contemplative. Is someone that can see God in all things and our unity with God. Christ in you. But we'll come to unity now. So just keep that. That's the next link. You will see how it links the one with the other. An old monk at the Mount Athos once told me, that's in the book that David Bentley wrote, contemplative prayer is the art of seeing reality as it truly is, and if one is not yet acquired the ability to see God in all things, one should not imagine it will be able to see God in himself. So as you begin to see God in nature and in people, it resonates both ways. You will see God and experience God in yourself. And that's, now I know the word divine union could feel like, wow, really? Now this is a bit feeling proud, or this is ego, but it's actually exactly the opposite. And it is such an immense truth, and it is something that I would like to invite you to really think about. Could it be that the deepest part of who you are is divine? That the deeper that you go to the essence of who you are, the closer you come to where God is. And there is some form of divine union with the Spirit of God in us. There is a beautiful verse in 2 Peter 1 verse 4. Thus he has given us through these things his precious and very great promises, so that through them you may escape from the corruption that is in the world because of lust, and may become participants in divine nature. So God has given us all these things, precious and great promises, so that you may become participants in divine nature. Can you imagine just what that sentence means? That you can become a participant in divine nature. But isn't that what it is? That the Spirit is in us. And if we say that, what's the hidden mystery? The Greek word mysterion, that's where the word mystery comes from that word in Colossians. That's the mystery. We don't know how it fits together. But the deeper we go, we find that God is present there. That's why the direction of spiritual growth is not up, and I'm above all the rest. It's down, lower, deeper. It's flowing down. So that's why you become more humble the more you grow spiritually, because it's less of me and my superficial things about my personality and my gifts and all my thoughts and emotions and all the things outside. The deeper the more I can let go of those superficial things, and I go deeper and can let go of the ego and how people think about me and expectations. I let go. The more I let go, the deeper I can experience the unity with God. That is there, but we forget. That is why reminding is to remind myself and to let my brain paths grow that way, that to know that my deepest being is an image of God. That's how we are created. And remembering, because we are cut off from our perception of, we feel we are separated from God. But remember, this aspect of my body is being remembered. So remembering that actually I remember that I am one with God in the deepest of my being. And that's why that's the source of peace. That's why the source of joy and the source of stability is always, in every instance, there with us. It's always there. It's available. The reason that we cannot drink from that stream is because we're looking for answers at the ego level, at the superficial level, at the outside external things. And the invitation of contemplative spirituality is to walk this path to the inner, to the core, as much as possible. So that you can know the way and that you can actually realize it's so close. It's not a long way. It's there, where you are now, where you are following this now. This is where God is, intensely, in a divine unity, present. That's the mysterion that was being revealed. And contemplative spirituality is a practice and an opening up to this divine union. So I think really it's still a union in difference. Yes, we are people with feet of clay, and we do things that's not always love, and we are self-centered. That's many times on the superficial level, on the outside, on the circumference. But in the center, that's why we let go and we ask forgiveness so that we can grow to the center. So remember again, Christ is in you, but Christ is in all. St. John of the Cross, that also wrote beautiful literature on this theme, said the soul center is God. But God is much more than that. for sure, more than our, our soul centers as well, but that's where you can find God. Sharon Gusendorf said the following: as we move to the center of our own being, and the divine being become more and more mysteriously interwoven. To be human is to have feet of clay, but also have a divine DNA. The interweaving of the divine and the human in our depths is the reason that the movement from our circumference to the center is always such an essential part of awakening and an authentically transformational spirituality. So I hope you get the links. It's all about God. What aspect of God? God's presence. It's a God that's always present. And how present is God? So present that God is connected with you. In your deepest being, God is there. And that's why we are invited to practice being with God beyond thoughts and emotions, because many times thoughts and emotions are obstacles for us to experience God and to be aware of God in every moment. Very important. It's not opposition to your thoughts and feelings. It's an invitation that there is a world beyond thoughts and feelings. And I think really that my experience is that in many of the churches where I've been in South Africa and in the Protestant churches, this aspect is really, on the one hand, the gift that the Protestant churches have and the evangelical churches, the beauty of the theology, but that can also be a hindrance because we think the only place where we can meet God is through thoughts. And other denominations, charismatic denominations, where the only place is to when I experience God in emotions. But the invitation of contemplative spirituality to say says yes, it is include thoughts and emotions and go beyond. Include and go beyond. And be open to an experience of God that is beyond understanding, beyond having words or emotions to explain that. So that's why, interestingly, the Oxford definition, or Oxford Dictionary, says that contemplation is a form of Christian prayer or meditation in which a person seeks to pass beyond mental images and concepts to a direct experience of the divine. I know many theologians and dogmaticians will say, what? Direct experience of God? But just, this is very interesting. This is the Oxford Dictionary, it's not the Theological Dictionary, saying that contemplation is an invitation that seeks to go beyond mental images and concepts. So it's opening up to just be with God without knowing. That sounds weird. You actually go to a different level of a different way of knowing, not just the intellectual knowing. Thomas Dubay said that contemplation is a wordless awareness and love of God that we of ourselves cannot initiate or prolong. Again, it's God that comes to us, but see the focus on the word wordless. So that brings another, you will see the next link that will be coming, if it's not just, if it goes past images and thoughts and emotions, it invites us to the area of silence. So you can see why we are moving to silence as an avenue. And that's why it's possible then to have a wordless prayer. It's possible to be in the presence of God without using words. We are so bombarded with words and images wherever we go. And can we sometimes just be with God? Not that the words, again, and the images are wrong. It invites us to an experience with God, and it does reveal a lot about God. But let's keep in mind, that's not all that God is. If we could understand God with our human minds, and that's the definition, then our God is very small. So that the God that contemplative spirituality invites us to meet is a God beyond thoughts, words, images, and opening up to the mystery of a God. That's why that God can embrace us that in ways that's not logical, or it's unthinkable, or past our difficult emotions. Yes, I feel this deep fear or stress or sadness or whatever, but I know in my depth of my being, I've been held by God. I'm being carried by God. So, because I'm going beyond the thoughts and emotions. Wikipedia, can you believe it? Wikipedia of all, just look at this. Whilst in the life of the intellect, if you talk of intellect, contemplation refers to thinking as profoundly thinking about something, so in the world of intellect. But in religious life, contemplation is a kind of inner vision or seeing transcendent of the intellect. Transcendent of the intellect, facilitated by means of practices such as prayer and meditation. So, can you imagine that just Wikipedia invites us to an experience of God, the definition, with a kind of inner seeing, again, focusing on the inner world, but transcendent of the intellect. Contemplative outreach, it's a international group, says centering prayer. That's also a way of doing contemplation. Emphasizes a prayer as personal relationship with God, as a movement beyond conversation with Christ to communion with Him. So the focus is on being. I'm not going to read everything here. Maybe just the difference. On the one way, you get discursive meditation where you work with images and words, but contemplative prayer is just gazing in faith. It's just focusing on being. As John of the Cross said, the difference between these two conditions of the soul is like the difference. Just look at this. That's such a beautiful way of saying it. The difference between working and sitting back and enjoying the fruit of my work, between receiving a gift and profiting it, using it, or being the toil of traveling and the rest at the end of the journey's end. So again, contemplative spirituality is not against any action or thoughts or whatever, but it's enjoying the fruit of the work. It's just being there, resting, as you can say, receiving. That's part of it. I think one of the most beautiful ways to see it is resting in God or soaking in God's love. For me, one of the beautiful images, for me personally, if anybody asks me what is contemplative spirituality, I would say one of the things that I really love, and I don't do it a lot, only when I'm sick or when I'm feeling, if I had a really hard exercise, I take a bath. I usually shower, but when I bath and I need to really rest, then if I feel sick, and I just let the water go kind of highish, and you just soak into that water. You just let the water surround you all over, and you get that deep, deep rest and soaking in the water. Not doing anything, not washing or whatever, just soaking. And I think that's the same that we found in that first verse in Matthew that we read. It's just that immersion in God, just being with God. And that's why many of these contemplative practices is just a practice of being. The analogy that is here is the analogy of meeting a friend after many years, and then you have this long conversation about this and that, and you will share a few things, what happened in the meantime, and what you did, and what the other person did, and it's lovely to connect, and then there comes a point that you just sit together. just being, without any words, just that being together. And actually that being together was the basis of the conversation that just happened. So that's why, again, contemplation could kind of be the basis from which you act and speak and live, the one in whom we live and move and be. So Thomas Keating said, contemplative prayer is a deepening of faith that moves beyond thoughts and concepts. One just listens to God. You see that the whole attitude of opening, listening to God, receptive to the divine presence in one's inmost being. Otherwise, just look at the next one. Our minds are like crows, he said, Thomas Merton, picking up everything that glitters, no matter how uncomfortable our nests get with all the metal in them. So that's exactly, our minds just gather everything from all over, and our minds are so full of all these things, this metal, and we just get more. So contemplative spirituality is a way of letting go of all those mind clutter that just the whole time gathers. So yeah, again, thoughts and intellect is include and transcend. Just to give a broad picture, there are 4 types of spirituality, as Corinne Ware wrote a while ago, that one can. This is just a broad idea that some people experience God, especially in the doing part, by being part of something active and service at the church, and that's the way that they experience God, or being part of a social justice group, or serving people on the street, and that's the way that they really experience God, and that's legitimate, isn't it? And you get people that especially experience God through thinking and theology and reading books and just getting a new course, and they experience God in those courses and thinking about new concepts, and that's great. And also people that really connect with God through interpersonal relationships, really feeling part of a community, or in worship, really with your emotions connect. But the one part that we don't give a lot of attention to is that other part, and that's where contemplative spirituality is focusing. And I think just bringing balance to all of it is the part of being that is also in Christ. And as you can see, all of these can have their to be too material, moralistic, too dogmatic, or too emotional, or too detached. We need each other, and that's why actually I think all of these can go together. There's another way. I'm not going to give some more information on that, but just to see social action and spirituality, and we need a head spirituality, heart spirituality, and mystical spirituality as the different ways that one can determine that. I'm not going to read that now. I think I'm going to just go to the next link. So let's just go through the links just to get it nearly at the end before we're going to go to a practical a spiritual exercise. So it's about God alone, God that is present. How present is God? God is so present that God is in its divine union. We are really immersed in God's presence. And how can we become aware of it? That we go beyond thoughts and emotions that sometimes block us from really experiencing this depth of God's presence. So then we get the invitation, how to practice that awareness. And that's where silence and awareness is a path that we can go. So it's like a gardener. If you plant the seeds and it's in the dark, in the moist area, you just let it be. No specific action or what, you just let it be. And it gets watered, but You just wait so that it grows. So that in the silence there is a listening, a waiting, a receptiveness. That's why silence is so important. It's a way of acknowledging that we are totally dependent on God. That's silence. Because usually we want to take control. I need to do this and this and this and this, or I'm going to think through this problem and I've got to get answers. But if the deeper truth can be our ultimate attitude, that we are receptive, that everything that we receive, even our thoughts and the things that we do, comes from God, it makes it totally different. The way that we do, the way that we think, the way that we experience our emotions are totally different if we are grounded on this deep awareness in the silence of God, our awareness of God. Maybe another metaphor is the metaphor of a sailor. It's just spreading the sails and opening it up so that the wind can take you. That's part of the spirituality. So I think you can get the feel of it. Maybe one last one is the metaphor of a sculpture. There's a huge block of granite or marble. Let's say marble, and the way to free whatever is inside this block of marble is to take away things. It's not to add. Is to let go of things and let go of myself, as John said, more of God and less of me. Let go of the external and more just being who I am in God. So I'm not gonna read this now. I'm just gonna end with this part with a poem from St. John of the Cross. You think how long ago it was written. But I think probably you will get the line now. If I started with this, it would probably sound like Greek or Hebrew, but now I think you'll find the line. I entered into unknowing, and there I remained unknowing, transcending all knowledge. I entered into unknowing, and yet when I saw myself there without knowing where I was, I understood great things. I will not say that I felt that I remained in unknowing, transcending all knowledge. The perfect knowledge was of peace and holiness, held at no remove in profound solitude. It was something so secret that I was left stammering, transcending all knowledge. I was so overwhelmed, so absorbed and withdrawn that my senses were left deprived of all their sensing, and my spirit was given understanding while not understanding, transcending all knowledge. He who truly arrives there cuts free from himself. All that he knew before now seems worthless, and his knowledge so soars that he left in unknowing, transcending all knowledge. The higher he ascends, the less he understands, because the cloud is dark, which lip up the light. Whoever knows this remains always in unknowing, transcending knowledge. I'm gonna now, if this video, let me just go to that one. Go past this just to give you another point of view on this from Richard Rohr. It's a short video where he just explains what contemplative spirituality is. I kind of gave you a few angles, but I think this could give you a good idea.
You know, let me back this up with a little bit of history. I don't want to bore you with history. But I know for most people, the very word contemplation, they say, where did that come from? Well, what happened is that our word prayer, that Jesus uses a lot, the Bible uses a lot, had already been cheapened, trivialized 2 centuries into Christianity. And it became a functional, problem-solving, practical thing. To pray meant to make announcements to God and tell God what you needed. It was a transactional thing, all right? So after 313, when we become the established religion of the Roman Empire, you've probably heard how these very sincere seekers went off to the deserts of Egypt, Palestine, Syria, Cappadocia, which is eastern Turkey, and that became the birth of what we now call monasticism. The reason it happened was because the main line of Christianity had become fast food religion. Right? Everybody was just Catholic because the whole kingdom was now Catholic. And you were Catholic because you were Italian, not because you met Jesus. And you Protestants discovered that about us. Thank you very much, because you're right. But nevertheless, there was always a strain that wanted to go deeper and say, what's Jesus really talking about? So they started using another word for prayer, and that word is contemplation. It's lasted down till our time. So in the Catholic Church, we have contemplative monks who make that their whole life, contemplative orders. It's really a different form of consciousness. It's not saying prayers, it's living in constant unitive union with God and everything around you. So whatever you do is a prayer. That's why Paul can twice say in his letters, pray always. He can't mean walking around saying the Our Father all day. And the very fact that in Luke's gospel, they have to ask him, teach us a prayer, like the disciples of John the Baptist have. We can assume he hadn't taught him a verbal prayer. His form of prayer when he goes off to the desert is what we would call contemplative prayer, where you rewire this mind so that everything you do is connected in loving union with the moment, with whatever's right in front of you. That's contemplation. Now it takes practice. I'm not there yet. I've been practicing all my life. On my better days, I touch upon it. I can enjoy it for moments, but it's hard to maintain a contemplative mind 24 hours a day because you keep getting pulled into argument, emotion, feelings, hurts, agendas, all the rest. So you have to practice rewiring this. The normal way you and I are wired is dualistically, right? Where you're presented with good or bad, gay or straight, black or white, good or false or true, and male or female, and then you're supposed to choose one of those. That's why America's so angry today. Really, I'm not exaggerating it. When that's the only mind you have, and you have to make a false choice and make men better than women or women better than men, you're never happy because it isn't true. It's never true. It's a false truth. And then you ensconce yourself in it and have to defend it and have to defeat the other side and show why they're terrible. That's the non-contemplative mind. Now, it's really only been the last 50 years. It was Thomas Merton, the monk in Kentucky, not far from you guys, who pulled back the veil and said Christianity doesn't teach contemplation anymore. After the Reformation, and we started fighting one another, and then the various Protestant denominations started fighting one another, you can't be contemplative anymore. That was the death of contemplation, because that's the triumph of dualistic thinking. Once you're fighting, you're dualistic. Trust me on that, all right? You've got to choose sides. You've got to prove your opinion. Every debate society can't seek high truth. It settles for a low-level truth between these two debaters. And that's all we have left. So if we don't rediscover the mystical, contemplative, non-dual mind, and I use those three words interchangeably, they're the same thing. I don't see how we are any alternative to Western civilization. I'm going to make that that big a statement. I don't know if it's bland or big. But I just see Christians largely having the same prejudices that everybody else does. That people look much more like their state than, than Jesus. And that's pretty evident right now in this country. That we reflect what part of the United States we're from, much more than having read the scriptures. Now I've got a book coming out in a few weeks that's going to be called Just This. Just This. And it's just about 50 little exercises to help you to be present to just this, that little leaf there sitting on the grass. And honor God in that, and be content with that, and delight in that. That's contemplation. The best simple definition I can give you of contemplation is a long, loving look at the real. Real with a big R. When you look at something long enough that you can love it and let it be reality for you, you're at the first door of contemplation. I don't have to judge it up or down. I don't have to analyze it in or out. I don't have to say, will that make me money? It's just a leaf. And God created that leaf for some unbelievable reason. I don't know why. And I'm the first eye that's ever able to delight in it. That's Contemplation 101. And it sounds so simple. In fact, it is so simple that it's hard to teach. It's really hard to teach. Then, once you have that mind, then you'll know how to pray. And prayer of adoration and thanksgiving and joy will come before just asking for things. Not that there's anything wrong with asking for things. But when prayer becomes simply talking God into things and asking God for things, you know what stays center stage? The ego. It's all about what I want, what I need. Now God is my personal servant that I can get to stop the hurricane in Texas, you know. That doesn't create highly enlightened or loving people. So that's why we teach here the contemplative mind. And then we send people back, hopefully, as much more effective change agents. And they're going to be much longer lasting. Because now I don't need to win. I don't need to have people agree with me. My truth is held within me. And I offer it if people want it. But if they don't, I know it's their loss. It's not mine. It's not mine. I can still enjoy it. Because again, it's the indwelling Spirit. We, as Paul says in Romans 8, we do not know how to pray. We don't. The Spirit prays in us through groans unutterable, through feelings that we didn't even know we had, and thoughts. I mean, my best sermons, I preach just when I give them. I didn't think about it ahead of time. You understand? They come just there. If and when I can remain in the flow. But the secret is always to stay in the flow. And then your gift comes naturally.
So that was a beautiful other view on it. So we're gonna do a few, actually one practice so that you can get a feel for it. But maybe just before we do it, let's just stand up for a minute so that we can stretch a bit and at least let some... one of the interesting things about contemplative spirituality is it's a big awareness of the body, is listening to the body and the wisdom of the body. So much of religion cut the body off and ignores the body. So yeah, so let's just let our blood flow a bit. Okay, so then you're welcome to sit down when you're ready. Just before we do one of the exercises, there are many exercises. Now we'll in the end just quickly go through a few of them. For instance, one of the very prominent ones that I will present later, I will create a few opportunities for that, is centering prayer. Just to get an idea of the simplicity of it. So how it works is you choose a sacred word, like whatever word. It could be the name of God, Jesus, or yes. Or if you read a text, I use usually the text for the sermon that I'm going to use when I do my own sitting, and then I choose just one word, and then I introduce that word into my inner world, and just that, and then just sit with that without trying to analyze it, just having that as like a butterfly that sits on a flower, and so I just introduce that, my awareness there, and then I will find that my thoughts are going away. Then I introduce that word just again. This morning it was streams, because the streams of water around the tree. So I just said streams, and then later I'll find myself my attention in another place, just streams. So that's the only thing, is introducing the word and returning. You see the returning always to that word, and just remaining in that presence of God. The word Jesus, or a lot of people use the word Maranatha, come Lord Jesus. So that could also be a way. So just this, when you do this for many minutes, sitting in the presence of God, letting your thoughts and emotions know that they are not the ones in control. The awareness of God is, you're opening up to that awareness. The welcoming prayer, I'll come to that later, that's another one. And the one that we're going to do, Lectio Divina, also comes through many ages, but I'm going to explain it in a different way. So it was, all the years, it was only these four, for many years. Actually, the Benedictine monks started with that. It was the Lectio, Meditatio, Oratio, and Contemplatio, the Latin words. But I like the other two options, the one read, reflect, respond, and rest. So you read a piece of scripture, you reflect on it, that's engaging the mind, respond with words, and then comes the contemplation part. So in this one, in this whole exercise, you are engaging other aspects of your person, or you are. But the contemplation part is the part where you just sit with God without needing to engage your mind or be busy with some kind of activity. But in time we saw that it's actually better. I experienced that as well. Before you start reading, you just become silent, just become present, so that your attention can be fully on whatever you're going to read. If you just start reading and your attention is still running around, then you're not so aware. That's why you put that in the beginning. And Incarnatio is just giving some opportunity and commitment, or how am I going to live differently from whatever I just read. So for instance, this morning when I worked with Psalm 1, at the end when I came to Incarnatio, I felt kind of my body was tired. It's in the morning and it's already tired, so I thought, okay, that's fine, that's going to be my gift for today, the tired body. Because that means I can just open up to the streams that will be offered to me throughout the day. So God is the stream, is always there. So Incarnatio is be open to the streams. It doesn't mean forcing myself, I should be full of energy, you should be feeling well. No, it's fine. But Incarnatio is going, how is my day going to look, or how am I going to act differently? So that's the sixth, and it's very easy. One can do it at home. So the first part, and we'll go through it now, is just becoming silent, being present to yourself and to God's presence. That's the silence. Then reading a piece of scripture. I think I've got a little bit longer piece here. Did you see this other words there that somebody said? Take a bite, chew it, savor it, and digest it. That's so beautiful. I love it. So it's really easy to do it at home. Just read a small piece. It doesn't have to be a longer passage, and then reflecting on it, and then just responding to whatever with words and then the Contemplative. I will lead you just with more words than usual for now, that you can get a feel of it. So let us just get ourselves ready. Even I see this in the 4th century after Christ, there was already someone, I just read today in a book, I can't remember his name now, one of the believers that wrote the passage said, it's important that you also in your posture show something of your intention, so that your posture will be, on the one hand, attentiveness and being awake, because you want to be listening to God and awake, but on the other hand, also resting in God. So it sounds weird, but there's like a resting and awakeness in God. So if you want to, you're welcome to close your eyes or just lower your gaze for a while as we move through the first part of Silentio. Maybe just become aware of your body and accepting and scanning through your body with whatever there is, without trying to change anything. Just truthfully becoming aware of your body. If it's tired or energetic, or if you feel a strain or stress, tension, whatever you can pick up in your body, just coming home in this moment as you are. The same with thoughts. If you feel like in your inner world of thoughts, your mindscape, you feel tired of for the whole day of everything that happened, or there are thoughts that's reoccurring, just becoming aware of what is present. That's really important. Not trying to change anything, just being present with the thoughts that are there. The same with emotions, getting a feeling of the weather in your emotions, what the feeling tone is at this moment, so that you can be authentic as the psalmist is before God. Say, God, this is who I am. This is how I feel at this moment. This is me. And in the silence, maybe just using breath as a metaphor of God's presence in the silence, becoming aware with the in-breath that God is within you, growing in awareness that God is around you, in front, behind, left, right, above and below you, and deep in you. Just resting in the silence. In the second part, lecture, we're going to read, and let's just read up to verse 4 for now. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit, and every branch that bears fruit he prunes to make it bear more fruit. You have already been cleansed by the word that I have spoken to you. Abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I'm going to read verse 4 again. Abide in me as I abide in you. Just as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. Let's give some time to just meditate on that word, using our thoughts and intellect, images, imagination, and feelings that come up in that image that we see of abiding in the vine, the branch and fruit, having fruit, more fruit and abundance of fruit. Moving to Oratio, responding with a silent prayer, in your own words, just a prayer responding to the invitation that you heard from the text. For Contemplative, I would like you to choose a word that can be a nest where you can return to, like a bird that flies away and come back to the nest. It can be any word that you choose. It could be the name of God, or vine, or abide, whatever word you want to choose for now, and just rest in the presence of God. You don't have to use words, you don't have to perform, you don't have to earn anything. Just be and rest in the nest, in the connection with God here. Whenever any thoughts or emotions or sensations come into your awareness, you can just notice it and let it go. Some of the masters of contemplation said that even if Mother Mary appears to you, you can even then say, thank you for appearing, but I'm going to focus on God alone. Just focusing on God's presence with your sacred word, resting in God, receptive, silent. Can you just be with God? Just soak into the nourishing water of God's presence. Ending our meditation with incarnatio and commitment to action, to live differently. If you want to follow, I'm going to use the words of Mother Teresa that she used with this verse. She said, "Since Jesus is the vine, I will cling to Him, knowing that He is the source of my nourishment. I will allow Him to have His way with me, with the assurance that as the vine, He will help me grow in Him and bear His fruit. Let us all become a true and fruitful branch in the vine, Jesus, by accepting Him in our lives as it pleases Him to come, as the truth to be told, as the life to be lived, as the light to be lighted, as the love to be loved, as the way to be walked, as the joy to be given, as the peace to be spread, as the sacrifice to be offered in your families and in our neighborhood. Amen. So I think you could perhaps get an idea of what the contemplation aspect of our spiritual practice now was. Where the others we engaged with words and thoughts. In contemplative, it was just a practicing of being with God, sitting in awe of God, being open to whatever without preconceived ideas. And then how beautifully the way that Mother Teresa, that really gave a life that was full of action, but she was rooted in contemplative spirituality. That's where the energy came from. That's where the nourishment is. And that's why I'm just going to end with this aspect of looking at our daily life, contemplative living. So if we can practice and really ingrain a different way of thinking and living, like Richard Rohr said, a different consciousness, then our lives become different. As Meister Eckhart said, as sure as I live, that nothing is so near to me as God. God is nearer to me than I am to myself. Nearer to me as I am to myself. My existence depends on the nearness and the presence of God. So God is just radically present. So if this is the events of our lives, like everything that happened this day or all the days, and there's a lot of events, the invitation is to be aware of this depth dimension in every moment of our lives. That we are connected with God. We are rooted in God. God is the vine from where we find and we receive our nourishment, our life, and our deep connection. And then, as Thomas Keating said, the interior experience of God's presence activates our capacity to perceive Him in everything, in people, in events, in nature. Contemplative prayer is awakening to the reality in which we are immersed. Then life is really different, totally different. Because you experience God, it's not a question anymore. You experience God in your life, and suddenly the whole of life becomes a mystical experience. You become a mystic, seeing God in everything. I'm going to end with a short prayer, and then there will be time for questions if you want to ask questions. Lord, you are closer to me than my own breath. May each breath I take deepen my awareness of your presence. You are closer to me than my own breath. May each breath I take deepen my awareness of your presence. You are as real as the sounds around me, and may each sound I hear deepen my awareness of your reality. You are as present and life-giving as my own heart. May each heartbeat I experience deepen my awareness of your slowness to anger. You embrace me as certainly as the clothes I wear, and may each sensation I feel deepen my awareness of your loving presence. Loving presence. Loving presence. Amen. I just want to stop the stream and then I will attend to your questions. Just hold on, please.